Welcome into Monday Night Tailgate. I'm your host, Tyler Knaeble, at PPR Tyler on Twitter, joined by Seth Dewald. Seth, this is the first time I feel like I'm hosting things. You're normally the one having me on your program, but now the rules are reversed.
That's right. I get to be in the passenger seat, telling you where, like, just complaining the whole time, just like riding with your mother-in-law in the car. So you're gonna have to suffer me tonight because we got some. We were talking before the show about all these parlays that are gonna make people lots of money tonight. So
Oh yeah, tons of money to be made on this. What people are calling the game of the year. We're also going to dive into Week 11 stuff. Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, and Saquon Barkley. Just when we thought we were out, they pull us back in. Also going to dive into some betting props for tonight's game, as previously mentioned. That's all coming up right after this. We're back. Let's just dive right into it. First off, whose performance for you was most impressive between Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, or Calvin Ridley? Like which one are you buying the most stock of right now?
Man, Washington's a really bad football team. They traded away everybody. Ron Rivera's getting fired. I don't know. I don't know how sustainable the Saquon Barkley performance is. I don't know how you feel. Actually, I do know how you feel because I read your article. But I agree with you. So Saquon Barkley, I think, is a really good sell. I agree 100% with that. Calvin Ridley, kind of doing what we had hoped Calvin Ridley could do. 2 touchdowns. I wasn't the biggest proponent of Calvin Ridley before the season, but there's no doubt that there's potential in that offense. If I had to give fantasy football 101, it's target players that have bad defenses because they're going to be in shootouts. It's like, that's why the Chargers players, I mean, not just because they're good players, but time and time again, they're good players, but they're also going to be in these shootout scenarios over and over again because for some reason Brandon Staley can't figure out the defense. So whatever. So yes, I like Calvin Ridley going forward. And Tony Pollard's probably going to have to show me one more week, but it was good to see that from Tony Pollard, to be sure. But, it's like, if you break my heart too many times, Tyler, you're going to have to, it's tough to build up that trust again. But, I mean, you're still starting Tony Pollard every week. I mean, nothing's changed, I don't think.
Yeah, target anybody on the Chargers but Quentin Johnston.
My God. Justin Herbert learned that lesson better than anybody else.
I've never seen Justin Herbert more visibly upset on the football. Did you see when he spiked the ball? He like threw it 70 miles an hour at the ground, like just so mad because it's collapsing around him, and it just doesn't seem like it's his fault. I don't think he's like 100% out of the blame. I think he does get a free pass because we know how good he is, but he probably gets like 15% of the blame. The rest of it's on the coaching, the weapons. Like even Keenan Allen, did you see that touchdown he dropped? Like the easiest touchdown pass he could ever have in his life, and it deflected off his chest plate.
The shadows were weird at Lambeau Field,
but still,
in that afternoon game. But still, Keenan Allen is one of the best receivers in the NFL. I mean, he would be the first one to tell you 99.9% of the time I catch that pass. That's the one time. Like, this is how the universe played the scenario out. Like, that's the one time in like a million chances that I would ever drop that pass that is right in my chest. It's just the sun was glaring off of his visor. I don't know what happened, but yeah. So it's completely agree with whatever you like. It's hard. I will say though, to defend Justin Herbert, it is hard to thrive in chaos, no matter how good you are. And I think Justin Herbert has thrived in quite a bit of chaos. Started with Anthony Lynn, and now with Brandon Staley. That it just doesn't seem like he has any clue what's going on. For a defensive coach not to be able to coach defense very well, it's just startling to see. And they draft Quentin Johnston over Jordan Addison, right?
And Zay Flowers.
That could have been a perfect compliment. I mean, you can have 2 of the same type of receiver in an offense. We've seen it work before. So just thinking that you need an outside receiver to pair with Keenan Allen in the slot is short-sighted. So drafting Quentin Johnston, I mean, clearly Addison makes that catch. Zay Flowers makes that catch. I mean, we're seeing it this year. There's just no comparing these players, and Quentin Johnston was clearly the wrong pick to make. So it's chaos on more than one level.
Yeah.
Really.
I sold him yesterday in Dynasty right after the game for I think it was a 3rd round pick in Chuba Hubbard. Just get him off. I couldn't have him on my team. Get him off the team. I was like, whatever. I usually do the whole quick takes, run through that really quick, but we got some questions in the chat. So I just want to hit one of my quick takes once, just because you're a Bears fan. In my super flex spot, I had Justin Fields at 100 rushing yards and still had less points than Tommy DeVito. That's just a crazy stat. Like less fantasy points than Tommy DeVito. And speaking of the Bears, since we have our resident Bears expert on the stream, I figure we might as well hit this question. Contending team, half-point PPR. Trade DJ Moore for Rachaad White. His other receivers are Amon-Ra, DK, Downs, Pickens, RBs, Bijan, Swift, and Warren. What are you going with?
I think it's a fair trade, but I always prefer the wide receiver. If it's close, I lean wide receiver. And I think Bijan, Swift, and Warren is just fine. And you just don't know what's going to happen with injuries. I think you can for sure count on Amon-Ra St. Brown and DK Metcalf, although he's been banged up. And Josh Downs has also battled injuries. Pickens has been inconsistent with that Pittsburgh offense that who knows what Kenny Pickett's future is like, but it's not looking very good at all. So I would probably keep the DJ Moore because I like your running backs. Jaylen Warren looks like the coming of Austin Eckler. He looks fantastic. The one bright spot on that Pittsburgh offense that I spoke of earlier, and I like what DeAndre Swift's doing, and we'll probably talk about DeAndre Swift a little bit later. So, and Bijan, I think is fine. Like Bijan is going to be good.
I'm with you too, because like even if you get Rachaad White, who are you going to sit? You can't, like, I would feel terrible sitting Bijan, Swift, or Warren any given week. So you would have to sit one of those guys. So I would roll with DJ Moore. So then you have DJ Moore, Amon-Ra, and then you kind of decide probably between Moore and DK each week, not Downs and Pickens, and then just roll with your running backs, Bijan, Swift, and Warren. So that's what I would go. Let's get into our first takeaway. We mentioned Saquon Barkley before. My biggest takeaway from this week is you have to sell Saquon Barkley and his 30+ point performance. I made a TikTok about it. I think it'll drop tomorrow, but you're pretty much going to hear it right now anyway. So basically the premise of it was he had a crazy game against the Commanders. 140 total yards, 4 catches, 2 touchdowns. He is that offense in New York. And I know he had a great game, but this Giants offense is still bad. I'm not convinced Tommy DeVito is the guy. He had a great game, but is he going to be able to continue to stack these games together? I don't think so. Saquon Barkley is coming into this game, has had 1 touchdown with a quarterback not named Daniel Jones. Like, this offense is terrible. They are the worst in the league in points per game and yards per game. Like, the worst offense by far. Like, I think they were averaging 11 points per game, and the next closest one was like 17 or 18. Like, they're worse than the Jets offense, which is crazy to say. Which now Zach Wilson's not even the backup quarterback. I don't know if you saw that. He's like the 3rd string now. They said Simeon's the backup quarterback. So
I did see that. And then Saleh has the audacity to say, I think he's got a bright future in the league.
Yeah.
It's you clearly don't think so. He's your 3rd string quarterback now.
It's over for him.
It's done.
All right. To end the Saquon thing, if your goal is to win fantasy championships, he needs to play good in the playoffs. Saquon Barkley's playoff fantasy football schedule is terrible. In week 15 at New Orleans allows the 4th least points allowed to running backs, and they've allowed just 4 touchdowns all season. Week 16 at Philly, the least points allowed to running backs this season, just 2 touchdowns allowed to the position all season. And then week 17 fantasy championship, if you make it that far, Rams 9th least points allowed to running backs, the least receptions allowed to running backs, 5 touchdowns allowed all season. So it's not great for Saquon. The odds that he gives you a week losing performance are much greater than a week winning performance, I think, in the fantasy playoffs. So if you can trade Saquon for like maybe one of these Lions running backs, like a Montgomery or a Gibbs, maybe, I don't know, you probably couldn't get Jonathan Taylor or Alvin Kamara for him, but like you probably know a Giants fan in your life, like a New York fan. Sell Saquon to that person. Sell his 30 point performance that he had and just be like, oh, he's going to get all the volume. And like he might have some good floor weeks, but I just don't see him exploding in the playoffs like he did this week against the Commanders.
The only rebuttal I would say on the other side is I think it's pretty much guaranteed he's going to get a shit ton of volume.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But he's playing with Tommy DeVito,
Yeah.
Danny DeVito's cousin who still lives with his mom or whatever his situation is. So I agree with you. And the schedule is not very good either. So I do like that. And I'm not just saying that because I like David Montgomery. I think those are two good, solid options. I think that's probably going to be more like a 50-50 backfield, that Detroit backfield now, because you saw David Montgomery get the touchdown at the end of the Bears game as a big old middle finger to Chicago. I think things like that happen, right? It's just like, let's give it to David here to win the game with David. So I agree with you. I think he's likely going to disappoint you in the playoffs. He's got some tough matchups. And if you can get one of those Lions running backs, or I don't know, like you probably can't get Rachaad White now. Probably not. But yeah, I'm right in line with you.
Yeah. Well, Uncle Ted's he's not rocking with us. Sell Barkley now and lose your league.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing. If you think he's going to do the most with the volume that he's going to get, then yeah, you're probably on the opposite side of the coin. But I mean, you just look at the schedule. I mean, New England in week 12 is probably his easiest matchup. They have the bye in week 13. So it's not a great bye week if you're trying to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's Green Bay, Saints, Eagles, and Rams. With the Saints and the Eagles, I'm looking at and Packers really as really good against the run. So we'll see. I mean, he can still be effective in the backfield, but you can't just give him away for a song. You have to get an effective running back like a Gibbs or you're kind of making your bet there, I think, with, taking the name of Saquon and turning it into somebody who's been more productive.
Yeah, I think Gibbs for Saquon is a deal you can get done. Gibbs has had like 20 plus points, and I think in 3 straight weeks for him. So he's looked absolutely great. Another guy who's looked really good, who we talked about a little bit in the open, Calvin Ridley. Takeaway number 2, my takeaway, that TikTok is live on the Player Profiler TikTok accounts, live on Twitter too, by Calvin Ridley, because this guy he's getting so many targets. He has 7+ targets in 7 of the 10 games he's played this season. I truly believe he's just been a little like a victim of some bad luck. He had just some terrible games. Like there are some high target games that he had where he had, like in some games, he had 8 targets. In that game where he had 8 targets, 2 catches for 32 yards, 7 targets, 3 catches for 40 yards. This one's crazy. 8 targets, 4 catches for 5 yards, and then 10 targets, 6 catches for 83 yards. Like he's getting the targets. He's getting, I think that the Jags truly want to get him going kind of here down the stretch. They also have to decide if they want to extend him to a contract or not. He's a free agent technically after this year. So I think they want to figure out if he could be that guy. And I don't know. If you're getting targets, I want you on my team. And I don't think he's going to have like these 20 plus performances, 2 touchdowns every single week, but 5 to 6 catches for 50 plus yards, I think it's something we could truly see kind of here down the stretch where he's giving you maybe 10 to 15 points weekly. And I think that's something where if he's kind of like that wide receiver 3 or in that flex spot, something very valuable to teams down the stretch trying to make the playoffs here.
Yeah, he's one of those players that got steamed up too high in redraft season, especially towards the end, as everybody started doing their drafts late in August and early in September. I mean, in some leagues I saw him go in the 2nd round, 3rd round, and that's too high. We knew that at Player Pro. We thought Christian Kirk was the pick at ADP, and that's proven to be true. But now I think you have to have a Bayesian process, and these values constantly change. So if there's somebody that's trying to sell high in a redraft league, they're perceiving to sell high on Calvin Ridley, targets are earned. And there's no doubt that he's getting targets in an offense that ranks, last time I checked, number 30 or number 31 in total defense in the NFL. So their defense is bad. They're going to be in these shootouts. Trevor Lawrence has proved, I mean, he's still a capable quarterback. Might not be as good as we thought he was going to be as the number 1 overall pick in that draft, but he's still really good. So it's a good situation. And in Dynasty, like I host the Dynasty Roundtable, so I always look at things from a Dynasty perspective. It's the easiest. You give me Calvin Ridley, and I'll send you a 2022 or 2024 second plus, Tank Bigsby or something. Like, it's the easiest move to make. Like, Calvin Ridley's not going to cost you much in a dynasty league. So if you're a win now team, that's a great target as your trade deadline approaches.
That's exactly what I wrote in the article. I think a second gets this deal done, and maybe like you said, throw in Tank Bigsby, who another guy who's getting steamed up, who's pretty much done nothing in his rookie year. ETN's definitely the workhorse back there. And then in redraft, like I think if you could get, like I think you could trade maybe Godwin. Didn't have the greatest game, so maybe not the best game to sell Godwin, but I think Godwin gets that deal done. Downs, Zay Flowers, Nico Collins, like those kind of guys, you could probably trade those guys for Calvin Ridley. And I think I would trade. I'd rather have Calvin Ridley than all those guys mentioned. So I think Calvin Ridley is a guy who's gonna you should be buying down the stretch if you are a contender in dynasty or in redraft. So I love that. And you probably still Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's probably on a losing team too. Like whoever has Calvin Ridley probably is not winning. It probably has a losing record or is around 500. Other guys you should buy. This is the last takeaway. It's a rapid fire segment. I'm just gonna quick touch on these guys. First one I had, we mentioned earlier, Jaylen Warren. In games with 14 plus touches, Warren is averaging 103 total yards, 3.5 catches, and 17 plus PPR points. Now that he is the starter, you have to think that he's going to get the touches, and he's proven that he's doing stuff with these touches that Najee Harris could never do.
He looks more explosive, especially as a pass catcher. I said this on my channel, I think, at the beginning of the season, when Najee Harris was the RB1, and yes, he was the RB1 overall his rookie season, if I'm not mistaken, it was because he led the league, or maybe he's RB6. I'm having a mental.
He was definitely top 5 running back. He won the championship that year, I remember.
He led the league in targes.
I think he led the league in receptions, right?
Yeah, I think. Well, he was. I think that's what I'm thinking. I don't think he was RB1. I think he was the RB. He was top 10, maybe. I think for some reason I'm thinking RB6. He led the league in targets amongst running backs.
Yeah.
And now Jaylen Warren is eating into that target volume, and there were signs that that's not good for Najee Harris, and this offense isn't good anyway. So the signs were out there to sell Najee Harris a long, long time ago. So I hope you did it. And it really looks like Jaylen Warren's the better running back now. I think we've got, or at least as good. Najee Harris does do some things. I mean, he's a bigger, more physical running back, but Jaylen Warren's more of the 2023 style of running back that we want on our fantasy teams. I mean, Najee Harris was masquerading as that his rookie season, but now he's competing with a running back that has that skill and can do it just as well or a little bit better. And so they're utilizing that, and we're really seeing, I think, a Jaylen Warren emergence here. And we'll see what the Pittsburgh Steelers decide to do at quarterback next year, because they're going to have some big decisions to make. Because I don't like the way Kenny Pickett's playing, as disappointed us all.
Yeah.
And like we were all pretty high on Kenny Pickett here at Player Profiler. So I don't know what's going on, but the fact that Mike Tomlin has his team 6-4 is unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I said it on the Dynasty Roundtable when I came on a couple weeks ago. Kenny Pickett has the worst swag in the NFL. Therefore, I am out. Any guy who throws with gloves, it's not going to be an elite quarterback. We have Teddy Bridgewater is the only other guy I can think of who consistently threw with gloves. Look what he did. He's not an elite quarterback. Your swag represents how good you are as a player, and Kenny Pickett has the worst swag. Therefore, I'm out on Kenny Pickett. Also, Najee Harris, first round pick. Like, they're playing Jaylen Warren over a guy who was a first round pick in the NFL draft, and it looked like a great pick a year in, and then people forgot that he's like 26, like in his third year in the league. So
he was. Yeah, that's right. He was a really old rookie. That's true.
Yep. Yeah. So Jaylen Warren, definitely a guy you should go be buying. Dynasty, redraft, doesn't matter. He, like, next year, I wouldn't be surprised if Jaylen Warren finishes like a top 20 running back. Even this year, like, he could, if he's the guy there, like him, and if this thing if it's Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, I'd much rather have Jaylen Warren. It'd be crazy to see Jaylen Warren like going ahead in Najee Harris and drafts next year, it feels crazy to say, but that's probably what's going to happen.
That's the right. I'm telling you right now, that's the right move.
Oh, for sure.
For fantasy, like, we play fantasy football here, and Mike Tomlin doesn't give a damn about your fantasy team. He's just going to play the best player. And so a coach like Mike Tomlin is telling you Jaylen Warren is the guy you want. Jaylen Warren is like, he does not care about draft capital, does not care about your fantasy team. He just wants to win football games. And Jaylen Warren is helping him be more competitive in football games than Najee Harris is right now.
Yeah. We can power through these next two ones really quick because they're pretty much the same thing. Puka Nacua, if Cooper Kupp misses any time, we know how good Puka can be if he's the only receiver in this McVay Rams offense. So I'm definitely buying Puka if, like I said, if Cooper Kupp misses time. I don't really know. Have you heard anything about like the Kupp injury? I don't know if he's going to be out or not, but it didn't look great. I mean, he didn't come back in the game. So
yeah, you said it. I mean, that's concerning for Cooper Kupp. I just traded for Cooper Kupp in a dynasty league, and it crushed me to see him. Like I'm going for it on a win now team, and I thought with him coming back, but we'll see. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We know that Puka Nacua is a good wide receiver. I mean, targets are earned. It's the oldest adage in fantasy football, so we shouldn't overthink it. When he's earning all these targets with Cooper Kupp off the field, what do you think is going to happen if Cooper Kupp's off the field again? Puka Nacua is going to get peppered. So I'm right lockstep in, and don't overthink it. Don't think, oh, the draft capital. Like, draft capital matters to a certain extent, but once you prove that you're good, and Puka Nacua's proved that he's good, then draft capital doesn't matter anymore. So take advantage of your league mate who gets too hung up on the draft capital, because Nacua's proved it. I mean, like I said, comes back to the simplest thing sometimes. Targets are earned. He's earning targets in the offense. So he's good. He's really good.
Yep. And then same thing with Charbonnet, not the Podfather's favorite player ever to come into the draft, but it's kind of the same thing. If Kenneth Walker misses time, Charbonnet is the obvious handcuff. I mean, who competing with DJ Dallas for attempts and workload. Like, I'm not really scared of that. So I feel like, but Charbonnet, I think I saw someone on Twitter today, though, doesn't have the best schedule going forward, but Pete Carroll wants to run the football. He's going to run it when he gets inside the 10 in the red zone. So I think Charbonnet is a decent pickup. I wouldn't pay too much for him. I don't think he's going to be like a 18 plus point per game kind of player for you, but he could be a nice kind of just fill and roll if you're down at the running back position. And the last guy I really want to spend some time on is, again, we mentioned him earlier, Rachaad White. Not the greatest game against the 49ers in terms of like his final stat line volume, but he had that 1-yard touchdown, which saved his day. But he's been a volume king this year. I think it's been kind of gone unnoticed. He has 16 plus touches in every game this year, but 2. Like, that's a ton of touches. And he's getting a ton of receiving work. If you play in a PPR league, like, Rachaad White is your guy. Like, he has just been so consistent from a receiving profile. And he's like, in the beginning of the season, it's like, oh, look at the yards per carry, look at the efficiency, but he's kind of picked that up as the season's gone along. I was a huge Rachaad White guy. I actually looked back at one of my tweets from like 2 years ago when he's coming into the league. I said, buy Rachaad White it was like a redraft take, because I thought he was just so much better than like Gio Bernard and Keyshawn Vaughn. Like, Rachaad White was like unnoticed when he came in the league, but now he seems to kind of be a guy in terms of fantasy football, at least.
Yeah, he's a weird one because his true yards per carry number is terrible. It's like number 58 amongst running backs, but then his yards created is number 2 amongst running backs. So it tells you once he gets the ball out in space and they're throwing the ball to him a lot. I mean, without this last week factored in, he's number 9 amongst running backs in targets. And like you said, he's getting an insane amount of work. He's number 7 in weighted opportunities amongst running backs. And before this past week, because I don't think the stats are updated yet on our site, but he was the RB8 in fantasy and the RB11 in fantasy points per game. So definitely outproducing his ADP, which I think player profile, we were pretty high on Rachaad White. Additionally, number 7 in evaded tackles. So, I mean, number 18 in juke rate. So, like, he's doing some things regardless of the yards per carry, like in the passing game, that we really like to see in fantasy. And it was one of those things that you could see coming. So again, I wouldn't, looking at the yards per carry is a short-sighted way of looking at Rachaad White, because I don't think the Buccaneers offensive line's as good. And when he's out in space, he's really good. So again, I love Rachaad White.
If you want to go watch some sick highlights, go search up Rashad White college highlights. It's the video by Sick Edits. I made a Twitter post this summer. It's my top 5 favorite college mixtapes for running backs. I think number 1 is like Kevin Coleman, sick college highlight tape. Then it's Rashad White. I think Kendre Miller's on that list. Joe Mixon and somebody else, but sick college highlight tape from Rashad White. That's all I got for the takeaways. Now time to dive into my favorite portion of the show, the portion that makes everyone here some money. It's time to get in some player picks. All these picks are presented by Underdog Fantasy. They actually have some pretty good lines. I was kind of doing some comparison, and they have like the one of the lines I have is it was like a couple yards better than it was on the other side. So go play on Underdog. Great sponsor of Player Profiler. And we got the game of the year today. It's Eagles Chiefs, Kelsey versus Kelsey, Taylor Swift versus NFL fans. It's going to be this is literally the game of the year. Like, this is the game that everyone has circled on their calendar. There's rumors that the Swift and the Kelsey family might meet for the first time. So that's just so exciting. I know everyone's just super tapped into that, but let's get into the betting picks. We are after last week, we went 2-1-1 on the picks given out on this show. It brings our record to 15, 11, and 3. So not a bad record by any means. I'm still looking for that first 4-0 week, but this is what I got. The first one is DeAndre Swift under 80.5 rushing and receiving yards. And this is probably my favorite bet I actually have on the slate. It's KC has allowed the 4th least total yards to running backs this season. Swift hasn't even hit this line in 5 straight games. He has not gone over 80 rushing and receiving yards in 5 straight games. And also something, Seth, that I've really been a proponent of on this show is that the sports books know more than we do. They know what they're doing. So when you see this line, which on Underdog, his total rushing attempts is at 13.5 rushing attempts. Now, he's hit 13.5 rushing attempts in every single game he's played this season, except week 1, where like Kenneth Gainwell and whoever else was like the workhorse. But after that, it was DeAndre Swift season. And he's kind of crushed that line in every game he's played. So that's a trap line. If you take the over on that, I think you're going to lose money because the sports books know what they're doing. They know you're going to look back in the game log and see the rushing attempts and be like, oh my God, he's hit this in every single game but week 1. That's smash. No, it's not, because the books are smarter than we are. We will not be made fools on this program. We will not be made fools. So I think it's going to be it's good. He's going to have lower than 13.5. If he has lower than 13.5, he's not going to hit this rushing and receiving total. Miles Sanders, who was on fire going into the Super Bowl, he had 7 carries in that game. Kenneth Gainwell had 7 as well. And as Chiefs defense is even better than last year, I think Swift goes under 80.5 total yards. That's my case. Where are you standing on this?
I like a lot of what you said. I think it's you made a pretty clear case there. I don't have much to add to it. I'm looking at Underdog right now, and how much money are the sports books going to make when Kelsey goes under his 76.5 receiving yards? Like, everybody's taking the over on that, right?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, like who's betting what kind of Debbie Downer out there? If you're in the chat and you have a Travis Kelsey under 76.5 yards ticket in your pocket, say something in the chat, because you are that is probably rooting against Travis Kelsey in this game, like with Swift and that you gotta have like a, I don't know, like a something in your heart.
You gotta be a Philly fan.
Just like, I guess so. I guess so. I don't know, but so that line to me, like, out of all the traps that I see out there, the Travis Kelsey over 76.5 receiving yards feels like a huge trap. And it's 16 on Underdog. You can bet higher or lower on fantasy points too, and 16.05 fantasy points feels like everybody's going to take the over on that too. So I'm building I got some picks here. I like Kenny Gainwell to go over 15.5 rushing yards. I like Mahomes to throw a pick, and I like Pacheco to go over 48.5 rushing yards. And then I'll find 2 more to make this like a 5-way.
There you go. I like that Mahomes over half an interception because I have that as well. He has thrown an interception in every game but 3 this season. Every game but 3. So like just if you're looking at it, if it's pretty much in theory it's a 50-50 bet, but he's thrown more interceptions in games than he's not. So I feel like we're good there. And then you look at Philadelphia, they have the 4th most forced interceptions in the league this season. So I feel like that also plays in our favor. So it just feels like 2 things in our favor. I like Mahomes over half interception. He's kind of like, he doesn't really get as much crap as like Josh Allen does, but he's a little Josh Allen-y where he likes to force some things, take some chances. And I think it's not gonna pay off for him one of those times tonight. So I definitely like that. Another half kind of gimmicky one is Jalen Hurts over half a rushing touchdown. He ran all over KC in the Super Bowl. As I mentioned, I don't think Swift is going to be able to be as effective in the running game. So I think Hurts is going to have to take over there. And I feel like I would be shocked if we didn't get a Philly shove or brotherly shove touchdown in this game. Like it just feels like it has to be in the NFL script. So I like Jalen Hurts over a rushing touchdown and Mahomes over half an interception. So that's what I like
it. I like it. I love that because if they get down at the 1, you've got it in the bag.
It's so free. It's the freest. It's the freest play in all football. And I think I don't want to go too in depth on the whole banning the Philly shove, but they just do it better than everyone else. Like other teams have tried it and they can't do it. So it's like it's not even an unfair play. It's just the personnel they have. It's the perfect storm for just them doing this to perfection every single time. And yeah.
All right. So here's the 5-way parlay. I've finished it. So we got I already said Kenny Gainwell over 15.5 rushing yards. Mahomes throws a pick. Pacheco over 48.5 rushing yards. Chris Jones gets a sack, and Jalen Hurts over 9 rushing attempts.
I love it.
That's what I'm sticking with.
I love it. I'm gonna give out my last pick here, and this one just I deleted this one, so I don't feel the best about it, but I had to do it just because it's Kadarius Toney over 5.5 receiving yards. 5.5 is a crazy low number. It's 1 catch for a first down, probably.
Just give him those fake passes that are passes that's just like a little pitch forward.
Yeah.
And he's like it's like an end around. Just give him one of those. He'll get 6 yards.
Kadarius Toney is one of the most gimmicky players in the NFL. KC, they're coming out of a bye. Andy Reid's going to scheme something up for him. I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be some snow globe. We might see the behind. Here's my prediction. Put this in the sports books plus 2,500. Mahomes throws a behind the back pass to Kadarius Toney for a touchdown that goes like 50 yards. That's my prediction. Lock it in.
There Easy money.
This one's just a gut feeling bet. I don't really have like the stats to back it up. He's had like 1 catch in the past like 3 games each, but he's gone over this receiving line, I think, in most of the games he's played. I just have a feeling like I love bets that you can just get in one play. That's kind of why I like the Hurts rushing touchdown, the Mahomes interception. Like you're just 1 play away from these things hitting. So my picks on here for the 4-leg parlay: DeAndre Swift under 80.5 rushing and receiving, Kadarius Toney over 5.5 receiving yards, Jalen Hurts over half a rushing touchdown, and Mahomes over half an interception. That's what we got. And I'm just excited for the game tonight. Really excited for the game.
This is probably the most anticipated game of the year, I would guess.
I think the only other one would be Eagles-Niners. I think we still have on the schedule. That'll be a good one.
That'll be a good one.
Brock Purdy actually hopefully finishes the game. It doesn't go out in the first quarter. Hopefully we don't see Josh Johnson in that game.
Oh yeah, they had to make a new rule because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
An emergency quarterback.
Exactly. Well, Seth, thanks for hopping on. It's fun to have a guest on this show. You got anything to plug?
Yeah, anybody who wants to follow me on Twitter can do so at Seth_DIEWOLD. Had a whole issue tonight at the dealership. They couldn't, like, with my name, somebody must have misspelled it or something. Anyway, so that's what it is on Twitter. And I have a YouTube channel as well. It's the same first and last name. You can get all the Dynasty you want there, and Dynasty Roundtable Wednesday, not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time on the Player Profiler YouTube channel. Tyler's guested on that. We've had Alan Seslowski on the show, the Podfather on the show. So you never know who's going to be on the Dynasty Roundtable to talk all things Dynasty. So
yeah, go check out Seth's YouTube channel. He is the hardest stream intro in the game right now. It's absolutely electric. I hopped on. We did a couple drafts this summer. Go check out the TikTok on playerprofiler.com. I'm just dropping fire takeaway TikToks on there, so make sure you go check that out. Go check out the Twitter. And no one cares about Christian Watson or Aaron Rodgers, right?
that's right.
No one
That's
cares about
right.
Christian Watson.
I hope
or
you
Aaron
didn't
Rodgers.
draft either one of them because they're not helping your fantasy team.
Especially Christian Watson.
That's right.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.